In the Sunken Pentacle City, identity isn't born. It is assembled under crushing pressure. But what happens when the ocean itself refuses to hold your shape? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Grab a blanket, get comfortable, and settle in. Because today, I am sharing something completely brand new with you. I have been pouring my heart into this dark, abyssal elven merfolk world, and I am so incredibly excited to finally take you down into the trenches with me. Since this is the very first time we're diving into this story, let me give you the setup for our descent. In this society, women hold the ledgers and all the lethal power, while men are paraded as breathtaking ceremonial jewels. Worth is measured in deep vent gold. Emotion is a fatal liability. Enter Vaelmira Naresthone. She is a flawless vault-born heir, perfectly calibrated for the upper tiers. But in the unlit depths beneath the archives, she shares a forbidden, undocumented connection with a male from the rival reefs. When that secret bleeds into the light, Vaelmira isn't just cast out. The very physics of the deep ocean, the biological architecture, the spatial auditors, the registry itself, begin to violently contradict each other. She isn't just losing her status. She is becoming a force the city can no longer measure. If you are excited for this brand new Elven Merfolk series and want to support the channel, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It really means the world and lets me know you want to see more of this story. Alright, let's sink in. Chapter 1, Unbroken Name. In the Sunken Pentacle City, identity was not innate. It was assembled. The lower vault dressing chambers were designed for this exact purpose. The quiet, meticulous construction of a presence before it was allowed to be perceived. The room was perfectly circular, carved from pale, unblemished stone, and deliberately devoid of mirrors. A vault-born heir did not need to see herself to know her worth. She only needed to feel the weight of her house settling into place. Vaelmira stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber. Around her, two attendants worked in seamless, practiced silence. They draped her in bioluminal fabrics that adjusted their subtle glow to the temperature of her skin, fastening the heavy, pressure-forged chains that bound the garments to her frame. The silence in the room was not empty. It was ceremonial, thick with the unstated importance of the house she represented. And yet, as the attendants worked, a strange, quiet friction dragged beneath Vaelmira's skin. She was still standing in the center of the house, but for the first time in her life, the ritual felt like a shell being fitted over a hollow space. Lady Naresthone entered the chamber without disturbing the quiet density of the room. Vaelmira's matriarch did not sweep into rooms. She occupied them, filling the room with a calm, deliberate weight. Saris was not a woman of warmth. To Saris, affection was a finite resource, one that must be carefully allocated to maintain the stability of the house. Sentiment was unpredictable, and unpredictability was the enemy of structure. Saris approached, her calculating gaze sweeping over Vaelmira's assembled form. She did not look at her daughter's face. She looked at the geometry of her garments, the distribution of her ceremonial weight, the precise clasp of the deep vent gold, Saris raised a pale hand and adjusted a pin resting near Vaelmira's collarbone. The movement was firm, a swift and clinical correction. "The mantle sits a fraction too high," Saris murmured, her voice a low, even vibration in the water between them. "If the crest is misaligned, the lattice of your posture will compensate incorrectly." "We do not compensate, Vaelmira. We dictate the form." "Yes, matriarch," Vaelmira replied, her tone perfectly even, matching the required frequency of obedience. "The upper terraces are calculating our endurance this cycle," Saris continued, her hand dropping back to her side. "When you enter the negotiation halls today, you are not merely attending. You are the physical proof of House Nareshthone's permanence. You must hold your depth with absolute certainty." "I understand." Saris paused, her eyes finally lifting to meet Vaelmira's. There was a profound, unshakable pride in the matriarch's gaze. But it was conditional. It was the pride of an architect looking at a flawless foundation. "You are perfectly assembled today," Saris said softly. "Remain anchored." Saris turned and exited the chamber, leaving the final preparations to the attendants. Vaelmira held her breath, letting the heavy gold settle against her chest. Remain anchored. It was the core mandate of her existence. And yet, beneath the heavy drape of her outward identity, her pulse betrayed her with an erratic, living rhythm. Kalor. A sudden, localized heat beneath her ribs. Unlit trenches. Hands bypassing the gold entirely. The crushing cold beneath the archives. Pressure. Desperate, unmapped pressure. A frantic lack of distance. The dark. The dark. A rhythm she could not trace. The attendants finished the final clasps, bowing deeply before retreating to the edges of the chamber. The ritual was complete. She moved toward the heavy arched doorway that led to the upper corridors. The bioluminal fabrics trailed perfectly behind her, slicing through the engineered current just as they were designed to do. Waiting just outside the threshold was Aeloren Vaer. Aeloren was stationed near the entryways of the high vaults, a man whose entire purpose was to audit the integrity of those passing through. He was emotionally restrained, his face an impassive mask, but his eyes were trained to read the subtle mechanics of a person's presence. As Vaelmira approached, Aeloren did not bow. He did not look at the magnificent gold crest, nor did he assess the expensive fabrics. He watched the way the current resisted her frame. "Heir Naresthone," Aeloren said, his voice quiet, clinical, and devoid of any dramatic inflection. Vaelmira paused, maintaining the rigid posture her mother had just corrected. "Vaer." Aeloren's gaze remained fixed on the spatial geometry slightly to the left of her shoulder. He tilted his head, a microscopic adjustment of calculation. "The weight is correct," Aeloren noted, his tone purely observational. 4 pounds of deep vent gold, as it is written. "And yet," Aeloren murmured. He did not look at her face. He just watched the distortion in the space she occupied. The displacement. He stopped, a rare hesitation fracturing his clinical certainty. It doesn't match. A sudden, icy stillness locked within Vaelmira's chest. "I do not know what you mean." Aeloren did not elaborate. He simply stepped aside to clear her path to the halls. Vaelmira moved past him into the luminous upper terraces, the heavy gold resting against her collarbone. But as she ascended through the glowing tiers, his unfinished observation echoed in the freezing silence. The crest remained firmly anchored to her chest, but the water parting around her shoulders carried a slow, unfamiliar drag. Chapter 2. The Failure of Recognition. The Grand Lattice was a theater of absolute density. Located at the center of the upper terraces, the negotiation halls were constructed from pale, porous bone coral, designed to trap and amplify the structural weight of the houses. The water here was heavily filtered, thick with dissolved minerals that carried sound and pressure with unforgiving clarity. In the lattice, you were not seen. You were measured. Vaelmira descended the sweeping entrance curve, her 4 pounds of deep vent gold resting precisely where Ceres had calibrated it. She held her depth. She moved at the exact velocity required of an unbroken name. The first anomaly occurred at the threshold. The registry clerks stationed at the archways were not guards. They were human scales. They were trained to read the physical resistance of an approaching heir and announce their house before the crest was even visible. As Vaelmira approached, the senior clerk, a man with pearl-dusted fins and eyes worn dull from decades of reading the current, turned his head. He drew breath to announce her. Then he stopped. His eyes swept over her heavy garments, his brow furrowing in microscopic increments. He looked at the massive gold crest on her collarbone, then back to her face, his expression blank with cognitive misfire. He opened his mouth, closed it, and finally struck his stylus against the announcement chime. House Naresthone, the clerk announced. It was not a declaration. It was a question. He had read the gold with his eyes, but his instincts could not translate the visual evidence into physical gravity. Vaelmira did not break her composure. She swam past him into the main hall, her expression perfectly flattened. But beneath her ribs, the quiet, erratic rhythm beat harder. Unlit stone, the sudden, localized heat of a hand bypassing the gold, a pulse striking against hers, violent and unrecorded, leaching its unauthorized weight into the filtered water. She forced the sensation down, anchoring herself to the heavy chains binding her mantle. The hall was a slow, deliberate choreography of the city's elite. Matriarchs negotiated toll rights through subtle shifts in posture, while their ceremonial males drifted above them, silent and spectacular in the artificial light. The architecture was the next to falter. The luminous polyps lining the central walkways were engineered to respond to high-tier metals, flaring into brilliant, cold white light when a vault-born heir passed. It was a visual confirmation of status, built directly into the biology of the architecture. Vaelmira moved down the walkway. The polyps to her left did not flare white. A few flickered, confused by the proximity of the gold, emitting a dull, defensive amber. The biological quarantine reflex triggered by an incompatible geometry. The crushing dark of the lower tiers. The heavy drop of his breath against her skin. A closeness that possessed no ledger, suffocating the cold white flare before it could even spark. Naresthone. Vaelmira stopped. Approaching from the lateral current was heir Lissari of House Olis. House Olis held the eastern vent routes. They were a heavy, aggressive lineage, and Lissari moved like a predator testing a perimeter. In the upper terraces, when two heirs intersected, the lesser house was required to yield the current, banking slightly to allow the greater weight to pass. House Naresthone was the greater weight. Lissari swam forward, her eyes locked on Vaelmira. She did not bank. She did not angle her body to yield. Instead, Lissari swam directly into Vaelmira's established perimeter, forcing Vaelmira to halt her momentum entirely to avoid collision. It was an astonishing breach of political protocol, an outright insult. Lissari caught herself, her fins flaring clumsily as she realized how close she was. But when Lissari stared at Vaelmira, her composure fractured not into defiance, but into genuine disorientation. "You," Lissari started, her voice tight. She looked at the massive gold crest, then at the space Vaelmira occupied. "My apologies. I did not perceive a perimeter. My depth is held, Heir Lissari," Vaelmira said, her voice perfectly even. "It is," Lissari agreed, her eyes darting over the heavy Naresthone mantle as if trying to reconcile what she was seeing with what she was sensing. "I am looking right at your crest, but my instincts read this space as unanchored." Lissari backed away, yielding the current not out of respect but out of an instinctual unease. She swam back toward her matriarch, looking over her shoulder twice. Vaelmira remained suspended in the center of the grand lattice. The physical proof of her house was bolted to her frame. Ceres had ensured she was perfectly assembled. The raw, unstructured heat of him, the unlit trenches, a rhythm completely divorced from the lattice, actively stripping the political authority out of the water around her. She was standing in the most closely monitored room in the city. The ledgers were open. The eyes of the registry were on her. But as she breathed the filtered mineral-heavy water, a terrifying, nameless sensation settled beneath her ribs. They were looking directly at the unbroken gold of an heir, but the systems of the room were already failing to agree on what she was. The city was designed to measure absolute certainty, but reality itself is starting to fold around Vaelmira. She isn't just losing her rank. The architecture, the registry clerks, and the physical current itself are failing to agree on what she even is. Thank you all so much for listening today. Next time, we plunge even deeper into the anomaly as the infallible systems of the deep turn on each other. If you're hooked on this abyssal descent, drop an anchor, hit that subscribe button, and let me know down in the comments how you think the matriarchs will react to this impossible event. I love reading your theories. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the deep.